I've been living with this Creta for about a month now, and I have to admit the design is starting to grow on me. But then my colleague arrived with this Seltos, and all that infatuation that I was starting to harbor with the Creta, it's starting to wear off now. Now, I'm not a big fan of this blue color, but a Seltos decked in gunmetal finish with all those red accents, it still puts a smile on my face. And if I had to buy one of these purely based on the emotional connect, it would undoubtedly be the Seltos. If I were to break down that verdict, the sharper detailing is what attracts me towards the Seltos. It has a sense of speed to it. The dimple pattern on the grille bezel is another likable feature of the design and an example of the attention to detail. The Seltos marries the old Creta's classic SUV poise to the exaggerated elements that are typical to Kia, and that balance just works. The updated Creta is marginally smaller than the Seltos in dimensions, and it has experimented with quite a few things. A more rounded off form, radical lighting elements, the negative offset for the wheel arches instead of flaring them out, and bold accents akin to some premium cars. All of this comes together quite nicely and makes the Creta appear like a completely new car over its predecessor. Barring the Nissan kicks, every other car in this segment has radical styling cues, and the Seltos and the Creta have pushed that envelope the farthest. I can't quite predict which one of these will age well, but it is certain that the Creta looks the most unique of the lot. I'm not a big fan of overdone daytime running lights, no matter what the price and positioning. But between these two, I prefer the Creta's unique arrangement. Interestingly, the 3-pot headlamps also have a better throw and spread compared to the Seltos' 4-pot arrangement. While the Hyundai designers have managed to achieve a significant differentiation between the Seltos and the Creta's exterior designs, the cabins of the two cars immediately make obvious the common threads. The dashboard layout, the digital instrumentation, the touchscreen infotainment are common between the two cars, though the higher placement of the infotainment makes it a tad bit safer in the Seltos. The hardware and the software therefore looks, feels and performs in a similar manner, and this is easily the best package that you have in the segment so far, even trumping the huge vertical screen in the Hector with its slicker performance, faster responses and better voice recognition and all of that. But as we found out in our previous tests, the Bose audio quality, though it's nice and crisp and one of the best in the segment, it's still not as good as what the Hector offers in its cabin. But apart from that, this is the best system that is available in this particular category as of now in terms of its functionality. On that note, the speaker housings of the Seltos have an abstract surface, while the Creta settles for a more conventional flat design. Both the cars have ambient lighting, 2 cabin color choices on offer, the fit and finish is top-notch too, and again, a segment benchmark. Though I don't quite like the 4-stitched pattern on the Creta's dash, I like the fit and finish of the switchgear. Now, thanks to the extended wheelbase, the Creta's cabin size is now on par with the Seltos. But in terms of the rear seat space or the seating overall, the Creta does a better job. The patterns, the scorbs, they're different, but even the size of the seat is different. So you get better, it's larger in here, so you get better under-thigh support as compared to that of the Seltos. The angle of the backrest is also quite good and it's adjustable. You also get these head pillows, neck pillows, but that's something that you can also get off the aftermarket if your particular car or the variant doesn't come with it. But in terms of the space, it's nice and spacious in here, and the Creta does a better job with the panoramic roof. The perceived space is much better inside this cabin. That said, both these Korean siblings are no match for the enormous space that is offered by the Harrier or even the Hector for that matter. But then they make up for the lack of the space with the kind of features and the creature comforts that they have on offer. The most notable of which is the connected technologies. Now you can remotely start the car, you can immobilize the engine if you like, you can pre-cool the cabin, you can also have the air filtration system start, so the air purifier can purify the air inside the cabin, and in times like these it is very important. So that's another one-up for both the Korean siblings over the rivals in this particular bracket. Also, you can literally sit at home and from the comfort of your couch get the status of your car, the fuel status of your car, when is the next service and all of that, which is again very nice. So similar connected suite is also offered in the Hector, but as the Seltos proved, there are more features being added to this entire connected tech suite that you get inside the Koreans, and going forward it will only keep on getting better. It's the same for the Hector as well, but like I said, it's a lot more easier to use, it's a lot more functional inside these two Koreans. Now let's quickly take a look at what are the features that the Seltos and the Creta offer and how they match up against each other more than the competition. While the Creta has a massive panoramic roof, the Seltos offers the more usable features like a blind spot camera, a 360-degree parking camera, and tilt and telescopic adjustment for the steering wheel, all coming together quite nicely to make this car easier for use for drivers of various skills and sizes respectively. Therefore, while we like the cabin of the Creta better than the Seltos for its seat comfort and its ambience, the Kia scores more points for a better feature kit that it offers. The crashworthiness of the chassis remains the same for both the cars, thanks to the platform sharing. Both cars have advanced high-strength steels in the construction, have front airbags and ABS and EBD as standard, and the top-end trims will even offer 6 airbags and disc brakes on all 4 corners of the car. Ironically, you cannot have this level of safety in a diesel manual Seltos. You can have it, however, on the GTX Plus line. But if you were to choose a GTX Plus line, it means that you need a diesel automatic. And if you were to choose that, you would also get some additional safety features like the 360-degree camera, the blind spot assistant camera, and also the heads-up display, which I believe is a nice kit to have. However, if you're settling for a diesel manual, well, the Creta offers the better safety kit here. Also, the Creta will get a tire pressure monitoring system as a standard fit across the range. Of course, for the lower end trims, you get a low line system, which means that every wheel well doesn't have an individual tire pressure monitoring. However, with the higher end trims, you get the high line system like the one that we have in this one. It's already showing me that the front right wheel is 1 psi lower than the rest of the 3. So that's a nice system to have, because tire pressure is a piece of preventive maintenance that is ignored, that's most commonly ignored. So having a system like this as a standard fit across the range is a nice thing. But if you were to purely compare the Creta versus the Seltos in terms of the features list, in terms of the safety features that it offers, without pricing being a concern, well, the Seltos has the better kit overall. Like the chassis, there's another department where the Korean siblings are almost identical: the powertrain options. The cars seen here use the 1.5-litre turbo diesel that puts out 115 PS of power and 250 Nm of torque. This BS6 engine replaces Hyundai's 1.6, 126 PS, 260 Nm engine from the previous Creta. That eager and sprightly nature is what we used to love with the 1.6-litre engine in the Creta, right? So, does this new engine still do that? Well, despite the drop in power and torque and even displacement, it still maintains those attributes. You will literally have to drive this new engine either in the new Creta or the Seltos and the old 1.6 back to back to be able to notice any difference. And that difference is really marginal. So yeah, it still feels very eager, it still feels very nice whether you're driving in the city, cruising out on the highway. The engine feels nice and torquey. In terms of the numbers generated from our tests, the Creta 1.6 diesel hit the ton from a standstill in 10.9 seconds, whereas the new Creta 1.5 does it in 11.6 seconds, while the Seltos is marginally quicker at 11.2 seconds, yet again proving to be the sportier of the two. Interestingly, a similar marginal advantage in the favor of the Seltos is also observed in the in-gear acceleration for the diesel manual. That said, the engine in the Creta feels a little more relaxed, a little more refined, and cruising at about 100 km an hour on the highway, it needs about 2000 RPM, whereas the Seltos needs a slightly higher engine speed of 2200 RPM. The Creta 1.5 claws back some ground with the fuel economy, beating both the Seltos and the outgoing Creta 1.6 with respectable numbers. Though they are still not in the same zone as the class benchmark, which was the Capture 1.5 diesel, which returned a staggering 18.5 kilometers overall in our previous tests, the Creta managed an overall 16.36 kilometers to a litre versus the Seltos' 14.9 kilometers to a litre. With the elongated wheelbase, the Hyundai engineers have also taken the opportunity to fine-tune the suspension, reduce the bouncy feel, reduce the rebound damping and all of that, and give both these cars, the Seltos and the new Creta, tauter handling dynamics. And it immediately shows. If you drive the cars back to back against the older Creta, you will immediately feel the difference. But between the new Creta and the Seltos feels slightly touter. It's got lesser nosedive under braking, and around the bends it also feels a little more sharper. Now again, learning from the Seltos experience, learning from what the consumers want. Hyundai have fine-tuned the Creta, like I mentioned, for the powertrain, and that's true even for the suspension. They made it to have a slightly plusher ride than the Seltos, and that shows. Now, you will again have to drive the Seltos and the Creta back to back to understand the difference. The difference is marginal. The Seltos feels slightly firmer when you're going through potholes, whereas the Creta, it has that slight plushness, a slight softness to it, which I rather like. As mentioned before, the low-end shove of the new 1.5-litre engine has been retuned for smoother acceleration, which means that the wheel spin or the torque steer, which was common to the Creta 1.6 diesel, has been reduced by a fair margin. The case is similar with the Seltos too. Now, if you were to choose the top-end trims of the manual variants, you get traction control and vehicle stability management. If you were to choose the top-end trims of the automatic variants, the traction control also gets the allied function of the terrain system or the terrain select, which actually works quite well. We also showed it to you in the first drive of the Seltos that we did. So if you were to drive on mild dirt trails, or if you were to drive to your farmhouse and maybe there are no roads as such, it's gravelly trails or something, it works quite well. It's certainly not a replacement for all-wheel drive. It's certainly not as effective as all-wheel drive, but it's a nice system to have. Only available on the automatics though. The automatics also get you different drive modes to choose from, which is another additional aspect. It's a nice feature to have, not something that can really dictate which car you should go with, because these features are common to both the cars. But one thing I like about the new Creta is that a lot of you complained about a floaty feel at highway speeds with the previous Creta. That is now gone. With the new suspension setup, with the new electronics package, it feels a lot more stable. Same is the case with the Seltos. So whether you're driving in the city or cruising on the highway, these cars feel nice and stable. They are very confidence inspiring. So if this is an upgrade that you're making from a hatchback or something, you're not going to feel unnerving in any sense. The visibility is excellent, the stability is excellent, and the car handles just the way you expect it to. So whether it's driving in the city, cruising on the highway, or tackling bends, both these cars feel confident, easy to drive, and very refined than the entire competition. Time to sum it up then. So as the points add up on the points table, the Seltos edges ahead, though very marginally. Now, if you dissect everything that we've said through this review, you would know that there are plenty of variants to choose from for both the cars. There are some variants where the Seltos actually ends up undercutting the Creta, but that also means it loses out on a lot of features. All the headlining features of the Seltos are primarily available in the GT line, and that is a very expensive lineup of variants. So if you really need them, you will have to shell out a lot more money, and that is where the value game is going to swing either way. It's down to you. You will have to decide which variant or which car gives you better value for the money that you're going to invest in. If I was buying, I would go with the Creta. The cabin feels more appealing to me. For a diesel manual, it gives me better safety kit as well, and that is the variant of choice for me. It's not the 1.4, it's not the 1.5 petrol, it's the diesel manual for me, and that is why I would go with the Creta. The other thing that really needs a mention is the kind of sibling rivalry, if we were to call it that, what it has achieved in this particular segment. We have seen these two cars push the segment to its absolute limits within the boundaries set for it by the pricing, and that I think is something to take away from. We've seen sibling rivalry and platform sharing from other brands as well. Renault, Nissan, we have seen multiple attempts from them, but these two cars show how this can be done in a very nice way. And I think, yes, there is sibling rivalry, but this is a better example of positive parenting from Hyundai, and I think this will only push the segment to a new high. It will be now very interesting to see how the segment reacts to this, how the new competition reacts to it, but I think it's going to be a very tough game. So here we have the winner. Seltos is the winner, but you wouldn't go wrong choosing either one of these.